Charlotte turned into a surprised Pikachu face, not expecting that there were things Lynn didn't know. Lynn didn't speak, only silently watching Charlotte for her answer. Seeming to have found something fun, Charlotte had a mischievous grin on her face, teasing Lynn to say something nice. Then she would tell him. Lynn turned his head away, closing his eyes. Seeing this, she pouted, showing him her cool-down amulet. Lynn quickly recalled that this item was not something taught in school. Charlotte said that the cool-down amulet could offset the dungeon cooldown time, allowing people to enter the dungeon repeatedly. The amulet looked like a stopwatch. Under the detection spell, Lynn obtained the item information, primary cooldown amulet. Available usage, 7/10. Introduction. This item can offset the dungeon's cooldown time, only effective for dungeons below level 20. This was the first time Lynn had heard of this item. Lynn asked if this item was expensive. Charlotte didn't know, because it was given to her by her father. But she remembered her dad's expression. He seemed a bit distressed when handing it over to her. Charlotte's family was very wealthy, with many successful companies under their names, and very well known in the Western Sea City. If someone like her father would find something expensive, the item itself was obviously valuable. Charlotte scratched her hair. She had to use up all 7 dungeon reset chances within 2 days, and she felt like she might be exhausted to death. Seeing her troubled expression, Lynn thought for a moment, offering to carry her through the dungeon. He guaranteed that Charlotte could level up to 15 without lifting a finger. Charlotte suddenly remembered this stern guy beside her could solo dungeons. Charlotte quickly made a decision, willing to share the amulet with him. Lynn knew even though the experience gained each time would be less, the fact that there were more entries which will result in a greater overall gain. It was a win-win situation, and Charlotte happily agreed. Lynn told Charlotte to rest first, and they would start running the dungeon in 2 hours. Charlotte stretched lazily, preparing to nap. She quickly fell asleep, drifting off within moments. Sleeping so defenselessly in the wilderness was quite dangerous. However, Charlotte slept peacefully, because Lynn was by her side. Charlotte curled up, sleeping soundly like a kitten with a small smile at the corner of her mouth. 2 hours later, Lynn's dungeon cooldown ended. Charlotte got up, stretching languidly, accompanying Lynn into the dungeon with a skeletal warrior on their side. Charlotte used the primary cooldown amulet, making her dungeon cooldown time disappear. Lynn started the dungeon, then selected the nightmare level difficulty. Charlotte's face changed drastically, thinking that Lynn had chosen the wrong level. Before her words fell, the two had already disappeared at the entrance of the dungeon. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere made it hard for Charlotte to breathe. She clung tightly to Lynn, staring at Lynn in fear. Lynn turned his head back to look at her, asking if she was scared. Bracing herself, Charlotte declared she wasn't scared, but just looking at the terrifying attributes of the monsters made her teeth chatter. Lynn told her that all she had to do was follow him. A large number of skeleton warriors appeared in the room. An unwillingness rose in her heart, and she quickly caught up with Lynn. They ran through the long mine tunnel, seeing the Mine Wolf King boss. The Nightmare level Wolf King was twice larger than the normal level Wolf King. A skeleton warrior slain a nearby elite monster and then threw the elite monster's corpse into the air toward the Wolf King. At the same time, Lynn also raised his hand. Corpse explosion! A huge explosion rang out, and the terrifying sound startled Charlotte. Experience rapidly increased, and a swarm of notifications surged in. Several more loud explosions followed. The Wolf King, who was unimaginably terrifying in her eyes, fell to the ground with a howl. The Wolf King that would usually take a team of 20 minutes to kill had been vanquished instantly within less than a second. She then realized that this was not a normal level, but a nightmare-level dungeon. When Charlotte learned that Lynn had started soloing nightmare-level dungeons from level 10, she finally understood why Lynn could level up so quickly. From the moment they entered the dungeon till now, it had only been around 10 minutes, and they were already about to face the final boss. The enormous Goblin King stood before them. Then, the skeleton warriors charged up like bears to a beehive, swarming the Goblin King. With a dozen ear-splitting sounds, everything returned to calm. A level-up glow appeared around Lynn. He leveled up to 15. Charlotte. Looking at the item drop, it was a shame it wasn't staff. Hearing this, suddenly a black shadow flew towards her. Charlotte instinctively reached out and caught it. Lin handed the Goblin King's staff to Charlotte. Seeing that Lin hadn't used any weapons from start to finish, Charlotte knew in her heart that Lin didn't care about attributes from these bronze-level gears. Lin didn't know what Charlotte was thinking. He was currently checking the changes in his attributes after leveling up. He quickly calculated that he could reach level 16 after running the dungeon 5 more times. Looking at the Goblin King lying on the ground, he touched it and apologized, saying he would kill it 5 more times. Seeing Lin actually talking to the Goblin King, Charlotte found it very strange. The boss obviously couldn't understand him. For some reason, Charlotte thought of the scene where Lin had just apologized to the boss, and she suddenly found Lin somewhat endearing and cute. Upon leaving the dungeon, Charlotte immediately used the primary cooldown charm. Only a dozen seconds later, they entered the nightmare-level Western Sea Mine dungeon again. The second time they entered, Charlotte seemed like a completely different person. As she ran with Lin, she was in a state of excitement. The excitement overflowing on her face made Lin feel a bit strange. The third time, fourth time, and fifth time, quickly, they have used up all of the entries. Charlotte successfully leveled up to 14. There was still a day and a half left before the final exam. They could run the dungeon 2 more times, and by then, she would definitely reach level 15. Charlotte temporarily lost her competitive mindset towards Lin. She knew that they could definitely enter the Xiajing Academy together. Charlotte suddenly asked if Lin was interested in competing for the top position in the province. Charlotte explained that if Lin could become the top place in the province, he could earn a lot of points. Most importantly, there was an opportunity to join the Creator Academy. The Creator Academy is the strongest academy within the Empire. While the Xiajing Academy recruits prodigies, the Creator Academy is for the top-ranking individuals among those prodigies. Charlotte looked at Lin with her brilliant eyes. She genuinely thought Lin had a chance. Lin spoke softly. He was determined to go to the Xiajing Academy where his sister was. If given the opportunity, he would also try to enter the Creator Academy at a future date. Suddenly, Charlotte saw a blonde young man behind Lin. She recognized him at a glance. It was Gao Yang. He was at the entrance of the dungeon, seemingly looking for a team. Gao Yang was already at level 11, but unfortunately at level 11, knights just couldn't tank the monsters. As expected, after searching for a while, Gao Yang couldn't find a team and looked disappointed. Lin was ready to take Gao Yang to grind the dungeon together. Charlotte chuckled and followed him. In an office, a chubby middle-aged man was shouting at a young man, blaming him for having the audacity to block the dungeons and preventing others to join. He was breaking the rules and possibly offending both the Empire and the Profession Association by doing this. The middle-aged man rubbed his brow. After all, this was his son. He instructed the young man to stay at home for the next few days and wait for the final exam. The young man asked about the missing guild members, and the chubby guild president replied that he had already sent people to investigate. The president sneered. It seemed that someone dared to challenge his dynasty guild. In front of the dungeon, Charlotte called Gao Yang over. Gao Yang's eyes were rolling rapidly, revealing a profound and meaningful smile. Charlotte's tsundere personality was well known. Only when she was with Lin would she tone it down a bit. She raised her fist and made a threatening gesture. Gao Yang was startled, saying he was just joking. Charlotte told him to follow them to grind the dungeon together. Gao Yang let out an excited howl, clasped his hands together and thanked them both. Gao Yang's expressions and actions were extremely exaggerated. Charlotte clenched her fist and said if he continued like this, she wouldn't take him. Gao Yang immediately surrendered, instantly becoming serious. But seeing him like this made Charlotte want to punch him even more. Charlotte snorted, and a fireball appeared in the palm of her hand telling him to act natural. If Gao Yang dared to say anything more, she would definitely throw this fireball at his face. When Gao Yang learned that the two had a 10-hour cooldown, he then decided to go grind some wild monsters and let the two rest. Before he left, he winked at Lin, cheered him on to conquer Charlotte tonight, and then ran off as fast as he could. Charlotte stomped her foot in anger and threw the fireball at him. The fireball landed on the ground, but the sparks caught on Gao Yang, and he cried out loudly. Covering his butt, he disappeared in the blink of an eye. 10 hours later, Gao Yang joined the team, and they entered the nightmare-level dungeon. As soon as he entered the dungeon, Gao Yang was the first to be scared and paralyzed on the ground. Just like Charlotte before, he thought that Lin had selected the wrong difficulty. Charlotte snorted and told him to talk less and just follow them. Gao Yang showed a variety of expressions, such as puzzlement, panic, and fear. 10 minutes later, Gao Yang was still gaping at the sight of the dead boss. He wiped the corner of his mouth and suddenly hugged Lin's thigh, saying that he wanted Lin to carry him every day, and he could dress up in skirts and cheerleader outfits to cheer Lin on. Charlotte helplessly remarked that Gao Yang had no backbone and lacked the spirit of a knight. Gao Yang didn't care. With Lin's presence, who needs to be a knight? Lin shook his head and then calculated in his heart. After one more run, he would reach level 16, Charlotte would reach level 15, and Gao Yang would reach level 12. As for Gao Yang, he wasn't planning to go to Xiajing Academy. His goal was another higher-level academy in the province that wasn't as competitive. The setting sun cast long shadows over everything. On the southern city wall of Western Sea City, several principals stood together, looking at the wild area outside the city wall. Tomorrow was the day of the final exam. They didn't know how well these children would do. An elderly principal asked Principal Lu about the two prodigies from his school, wondering if they were also preparing for the Xiajing Academy. Principal Lu looked unblinkingly into the distance and nodded. He knew that the competition for Xiajing Academy was the most intense. According to previous year's standards, only those at level 15 had a decent chance, while those at level 16 could guarantee their admission. He sighed, recalling over the years, only Su Qianxing and Lin's sister from their city had ever reached level 16 before the final exam. He wondered if these two youngsters this year had a chance. Finally, a few students appeared in their line of sight. Under the detection spell, a level 12 gladiator named John came into view, followed by a level 13 female archer named Bright. One by one, the students returned, while the principals continued to use detection spells on the city wall. This time, every year was actually a pre-exam competition among the principals to see whose students were the most outstanding. As the sky darkened, Principal Lu began to feel anxious. Charlotte, Lin, and Gao Yang hadn't returned yet. Finally, just before the night fully set in, Principal Lu saw 3 figures in the distance. A smile immediately appeared on his face. The result wasn't important, as long as they returned safely. Detection spells flew out one after another. Gao Yang was at level 12, and Charlotte was at level 15, causing the principals to express surprise one after another. The last one, Lin, was at level 16, and all of the principals gasped in surprise. Lin had really reached level 16, one level higher than Charlotte. Seeing Gao Yang's shield and Charlotte's magic staff, they then understood that these children had cleared many dungeons. Principal Lu was delighted and let the 3 of them get on the bus first, and he was in a great mood. After all of the students have returned, he had won out in front of the other principals. Moreover, perhaps this time both Lin and Charlotte could be admitted to Xiajing Academy, which would be an extremely honorable achievement for Western Sea City and the high school. As night fell, Lin continued his meditation. He followed his own thoughts and didn't place too much emphasis on the final exam. He was confident he would definitely get into Xiajing Academy. If he had a chance, he would also try to strive for the top spot in the province. The next morning, Lin woke up on time. Exactly 100 skeleton warriors were quietly waiting in the summoning space. Arriving at the school, many classmates had already arrived. Gao Yang waved vigorously at Lin, and after a while, Charlotte also arrived. Charlotte was much more popular than Lin, and the students flocked around her. But contrary to her usual demeanor, Charlotte came over to Lin and asked him how he was feeling. Lin nodded slightly in response. Charlotte smiled and hoped to see Lin at Xiajing Academy. After everyone had arrived, Principal Lu came over and gave each person a teleportation stone. The teleportation stone would take everyone to the exam site. Principal Lu once again reminded the students to pay attention to their safety. The students activated their teleportation stones one by one, and with a stream of light, each person disappeared. The exam site was extremely spacious, like a huge square. There were probably tens of thousands of people. The light of teleportation never stopped. The examinees from Western Sea City were all distributed in the same area. Under the gaze of everyone, a towering gate descended from the sky. The trial tower was activated, and a solemn voice resounded across the entire square. It started explaining the exam rules. The stern voice wouldn't let students speak or ask questions. Violators would be directly disqualified from the exam. A few were whispering. At this time, the trial tower suddenly shot out a few rays of light that landed on these few students. These students then instantly disappeared. Gao Yang immediately covered his mouth. The rules were so strict. At this moment, the entire venue was exceptionally quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Even breathing became careful and cautious. The stern voice spoke up again. The trial tower would arrange different exams according to professions. Combat types would have combat exams, and support professions would have non-combat exams. After passing the basic exam, each profession will have the right to choose the difficulty level. Various difficulties and results will grant points. Apart from personal equipment, no other items can be used. The stern voice detailed the rules of the exam. Everyone queued up to enter the trial tower one by one. Lin followed the crowd into the tower. At the top of the trial tower, there were several stern-faced and imposing individuals. They were the examiners in charge of this year's final exam in the province. Seeing the rare profession of necromancer, according to the information, it was a type of summoning mage. The person in charge was preparing to set monsters 2 levels higher than Lin, according to the rules for rare mages. A monster appeared before Lin. This monster had a wolf's head but was wearing a robe. It was even holding a magic wand in its hand. Lin found that the detection spell was ineffective here. Apart from the name of the monster, there was no more information. A countdown appeared on the screen. Lin was prepared. Lin raised his left hand, and when the countdown ended, the soul flame fell on the head of the Wolf Beastman mage. With a scream, the Wolf Beastman mage fell straight down. At this time, on the top floor of the tower, the examiners all showed shocked expressions. Speechless to see that Lin's enemy was defeated in 0.1 seconds.